Good evening. A few hours ago, one of the biggest terrorist attacks happened in the United States. We don't have so much precise information. However, everyone knows that it was a terrible and extremely big attack to the cradle capitalist. Everything we know so far is that the New York City and Virginia were attacked. Most precisely, the World Trade Center in New York and Defense Department, Pentagon. The hijackers took control of the airplanes and then started with this horror plan against the Americans. The Boeing 767 departed from Logan Airport at 8:46 a.m. and headed toward Los Angeles. The airplane crossed northern Manhattan, where no plane of that size should be. When it arrived in New York, the airplane bumped into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. After this first attack, a big commercial airplane coming from the south crashed into the South Tower approximately at 9 a.m. Beyond the World Trade Center in New York at 9:37 a.m., an explosion was heard in Washington, D.C., and this time the Pentagon was their target. The American weakness was the Vietnam Syndrome. The idea that we were unwilling, unable to essentially meet threat with force because of our fears of Vietnam in the past entanglements. And that is what gave the message to others in the Middle East that they could ascend themselves and maybe even threaten us without the idea of retribution, that they would pay a price. And that is what emboldened Osama bin Laden to have the audacity to believe that he could fight conflict against the United States and win. With those attacks yesterday, the American weakness was exposed to the whole world. Many people said that the one guilty is the FBI. The agency is not prepared for fighting against terrorism. The FBI was a decentralized organization. To run a counterterrorism, deep counterterrorism policy, you need strong leadership from Washington headquarters that could coordinate a national effort. However, a lot of power for FBI was distributed to different field offices. The FBI was the lead agency in collecting information about terrorism inside the United States. We don't know yet the exact number of deaths. However, we do have information about the message that the American government received from these attacks but just ignored it. The United States had an enemy and all the strategy is against this enemy, the extinct Soviet Union. With the end of the Cold War, the US was not prepared for the attack. However, for surprise to the whole world, all facts point to the terrorist organization Al-Qaeda, how authors attack. The Al-Qaeda's ideology is based on Sharia law. Bin Laden started to recruit Muslims with an oppressive speech against the West and especially the United States. And he used a jihad conception from extreme Islamic writers and fight for the theocracy government. Globalization influenced not the only economy but all cultural aspects. This movement started to influence in social behavior and the woman equality. For Bin Laden, this is the West's effort to impose their culture in the Muslim countries. The Al-Qaeda has its own speech based on religion, history and culture. For them, the United States was trying to subvert those concepts and invade their culture. Muslims can't be represented for the Al-Qaeda. This radical group wants to impose their own values and Islamic vision using violence. The Muslim principles is with peace, and this small radical group disturbed the Muslims' world vision. Many people call the hijackers radicals, but radicalization is the process where people become extremists. It doesn't necessarily need to be violent in order to be an extremist. On the other hand, you can be extremist not because of your ideas, but for example, because of your actions. After all those attacks, the world will sleep worried. We are waiting for President's speech to see how the Americans will respond to those attacks. The American people is apprehensive for what's to come. We'll be back soon with more information. Good evening.